What would you do if your daily routine suddenly revealed a secret that could change history forever? In the heart of Europe's most prestigious palace, a simple security guard performed the same tasks every day for 15 years. Check the gates, patrol the corridors, monitor the visitors. Nothing ever changed in this world of ancient traditions and royal protocols. But on one ordinary Tuesday morning, something would happen that would make international headlines and force historians to rewrite chapters of royal history. This is the true story of Marcus Weber, a quiet man who thought he was just doing his job, and Dr.
Elena Vasquez, a palace physician whose sharp eyes caught what everyone else had missed for decades. What started as a routine security check would uncover a mystery hidden in plain sight, challenging everything the world thought it knew about one of Europe's most beloved royal families. Sometimes the most extraordinary discoveries happen in the most ordinary moments. This is one of those stories.
Marcus Weber adjusted his uniform collar as he approached the main entrance of Heidelberg Palace. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone courtyard, and tourists were already gathering outside the ornate iron gates. For 15 years, Marcus had walked this same path, carried the same keys, and followed the same security protocols. At 52 years old, he had become as much a fixture of the palace as the ancient stone walls themselves.
The palace stood majestically against the German countryside, its Baroque architecture telling stories of centuries past. Built in the 17th century, it had housed nobility, survived wars, and eventually transformed into one of Europe's most visited historical sites. Marcus took pride in protecting this piece of living history, even though his days rarely brought anything more exciting than helping lost tourists or dealing with overly enthusiastic photographers. His routine was precise and unchanging.
First, he would check all entry points, ensuring the overnight security systems had functioned properly. Then he would walk through the main corridors, inspecting for any signs of damage or unusual activity.
The palace employed several guards, but Marcus was known for his attention to detail. His colleagues often joked that he could spot a dust particle out of place from across a room. The palace's current occupant was Princess Isabella von Habsburg, a distant relative of the famous Austrian imperial family. At 78 years old, she had lived in the palace for over 40 years, maintaining it as both her private residence and a public museum. The princess was beloved by locals and visitors alike, known for her gracious manner and dedication to preserving the palace's historical significance. Marcus had met Princess Isabella many times over the years. She always greeted him warmly, often asking about his family or commenting on the weather. Despite her royal status, she possessed a genuine kindness that made everyone feel comfortable in her presence. She had never married and had no children, dedicating her life entirely to the palace and its legacy. The palace staff was small but efficient. Besides the security team, there was a housekeeping staff of 6, 2 full-time curators, and Dr. Koken said, Elena Vasquez, the princess's personal physician. Dr. Vasquez had joined the palace staff 3 years earlier, a young woman with an impressive medical background and an unusual interest in historical forensics. Some staff members found her intense and overly curious, but Marcus appreciated her thorough approach to everything she did. As Marcus began his morning rounds, he noticed that Princess Isabella was already awake. Through the tall windows of her private dining room, he could see her sitting at her usual table, a delicate porcelain cup in her hands. She followed the same routine every morning, rising at 7, having tea, and light breakfast in her private quarters, then spending time in her personal study before receiving visitors or attending to palace business. The princess's morning tea was something of a palace tradition. She used a specific set of china that had belonged to her great-grandmother, a beautiful collection decorated with hand-painted roses and gold trim. The tea service sat on a silver tray that gleamed in the morning light, and Marcus could see steam rising from the ornate teapot. What Marcus didn't know was that this particular morning would be different from all the others. Dr. Vasquez had arrived early for the princess's weekly health checkup. As the palace physician, she monitored Princess Isabella's health carefully, ensuring that the elderly woman remained in good condition despite her advanced age. Dr. Vasquez knocked gently on the dining room door before entering. Princess Isabella looked up with a smile, setting down her teacup on its matching saucer. The doctor had always been struck by how graceful the princess remained, even in her late 70s. Her posture was excellent, her eyes bright and alert, and her hands steady despite her age. "Good morning, Your Highness," Dr. Kessikutton, Vasquez said, setting down her medical bag on a side table. "I hope I'm not disturbing your breakfast." "Not at all, my dear," Princess Isabella replied in her cultured accent, a blend of German and Austrian influences. "I was just finishing my morning tea." Please, sit with me for a moment before we begin. Dr. Vasquez accepted the invitation, taking the chair across from the princess. She had grown fond of Princess Isabella over the years, finding her to be not only a patient but a fascinating woman with incredible stories from her long life. The princess had witnessed major historical events, met world leaders, and maintained the palace through changing times. As they chatted about the weather and the day's scheduled tours, Dr. Vasquez's trained eye automatically assessed her patient's condition. Princess Isabella's color looked good, her breathing seemed normal, and her mental sharpness remained impressive. However, something caught the doctor's attention, something she couldn't quite identify at first. The teacup sat on the table between them, and as Princess Isabella reached for it again, Dr. Vasquez noticed something unusual about the liquid inside. The tea appeared darker than normal, with an odd consistency that didn't look quite right. Her medical training had taught her to observe details that others might miss, and something about the princess's morning beverage troubled her. "Your Highness," Dr. Vasquez said carefully, "I hope you don't mind me asking, but what type of tea are you drinking this morning? It has an interesting color." Princess Isabella glanced down at her cup with a gentle smile. "Oh, this is my special blend. I've been drinking it every morning for as long as I can remember. My grandmother gave me the recipe when I was young, and I've never changed it. It's quite unique, I believe." "Doctor." Vasquez nodded politely, but her curiosity was now fully aroused. The liquid in the cup didn't look like any tea she had ever seen. It had an almost metallic sheen to it, and when Princess Isabella lifted the cup, the doctor noticed that it seemed thicker than normal tea should be. "Would you mind sharing the recipe with me?" Dr. Vasquez asked, trying to keep her tone casual. "I'm always interested in traditional remedies and family recipes. My grandmother had some interesting concoctions as well." Princess Isabella set down the cup and clasped her hands together. "Well, it's not really a secret. My grandmother always said it contained special herbs and minerals that promoted longevity and good health. She lived to be 96, and she drank this tea every day of her adult life." Dr. Vasquez leaned forward slightly, her scientific mind now fully engaged. "That's remarkable. And you've been drinking it for how long?" "Oh my, let me think," Princess Isabella said, her eyes turning upward as she calculated. "I started when I was 18, when I first came to live at the palace. So that would be 60 years now. My grandmother insisted it was essential for maintaining good health, and, well, she always said it had other special properties as well." The doctor's pulse quickened. 60 years of drinking the same concoction every single day? And the princess's remarkable health for her age? These couldn't be coincidences. In her medical career, Dr. Vasquez had seen many patients in their late 70s, and few possessed Princess Isabella's vitality and mental acuity. "Other special properties?" Dr. Vasquez asked, trying not to seem too eager. Princess Isabella laughed softly, a sound like silver bells. "Oh, you know how grandmothers can be with their old wives' tales. She claimed it would keep me young and beautiful forever." "Nonsense, of course, but I've always enjoyed the ritual of it. The taste is quite unique, earthy, with a slight metallic flavor that some people might find unpleasant, but I've grown to love it." Dr. Vasquez felt her breath catch in her throat. Metallic flavor? Combined with the unusual appearance of the liquid and the princess's exceptional health? Her medical mind was racing through possibilities, most of them seeming impossible or dangerous. "Your Highness, I hope you won't think this presumptuous, but would it be possible for me to examine a sample of your tea? From a medical perspective, I'm fascinated by the connection between traditional remedies and health outcomes. Your vitality is truly remarkable for someone of your age." Princess Isabella looked pleased by the compliment. "You flatter an old woman, doctor. But certainly you may examine it if you wish. I have the ingredients in my private pantry. My housekeeper prepares it fresh for me every morning, using my grandmother's exact measurements." Dr. Vasquez stood up, her heart beating faster with anticipation. "That would be wonderful. Would now be convenient?" "Of course," Princess Isabella said, rising gracefully from her chair. "Follow me, my dear." As they walked through the palace corridors, Dr. Vasquez couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to discover something significant. The princess's health, the strange appearance of the tea, the 60-year tradition, all of these elements were creating a puzzle that her scientific mind was desperate to solve. Princess Isabella led her through a series of interconnected rooms, each filled with priceless antiques and artwork. They passed portraits of long-dead nobility, ancient tapestries and furniture that belonged in museums. Finally, they reached a small pantry area adjacent to the princess's private kitchen. The pantry was organized with military precision. Shelves lined the walls, filled with jars, bottles, and containers of various sizes. Princess Isabella moved to a particular section and began retrieving items. "Let me see," she said, her voice thoughtful as she gathered ingredients. "There's the dried elderflower, chamomile, a special root that comes from Tibet. And then—" She reached for a small, heavy container on the highest shelf. Dr. Vasquez watched as Princess Isabella carefully lifted down what appeared to be an antique metal container about the size of a coffee can, but clearly much older. The surface was tarnished and covered with intricate engravings that looked like they might be ancient symbols or writing. "This is the most important ingredient," Princess Isabella said, holding the container carefully. "My grandmother was very specific about the amount to use. She said this came from her grandmother and it's been in our family for generations. I've always been very careful with it because I have no idea where to get more when it runs out." Dr. Vasquez stared at the container, feeling a chill run down her spine. Something about it looked ominous, almost dangerous. The metal appeared to be very old, possibly centuries old, and the engravings suggested it might have historical significance beyond just being a family heirloom. "What exactly is in that container?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Princess Isabella began working at the lid, which seemed to require considerable effort to open. "I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. My grandmother called it the life essence, and said it was a powder made from special stones. She was always very mysterious about it, and by the time I was old enough to ask better questions, she had passed away." The lid finally came free, and Princess Isabella tipped the container slightly so Dr. Vasquez could see inside. What the doctor saw made her gasp involuntarily. The container held a fine silver-gray powder that seemed to shimmer in the light. It didn't look like any herb or natural substance she had ever encountered. "How much of this do you use each day?" Dr. Vasquez asked, her voice tight with concern. "Just a pinch," Princess Isabella replied, demonstrating with her fingers. "My grandmother was very clear about that. She said too much could be dangerous, but the right amount was beneficial. I've never changed the dosage in 60 years. Dr. Vasquez felt her world tilting. Every instinct she possessed as a medical professional was screaming warnings. The powder looked metallic, possibly containing heavy metals that could be toxic. But Princess Isabella's health was exceptional, not deteriorating. How was that possible? "Your Highness," she said carefully, "I really would like to have this analyzed by a laboratory. Would you be willing to let me take a small sample?" Princess Isabella looked surprised by the serious tone in the doctor's voice.
Of course. If you think it's important.
"But surely there can't be anything dangerous about it? I've been drinking it for 60 years, and I feel wonderful." Dr. Vasquez nodded, but privately she was thinking about all the possibilities. Heavy metal poisoning usually caused severe health problems, but what if the amount was small enough to avoid acute toxicity while still accumulating in the body? Or what if this wasn't a common metal at all? "I'm sure you're fine," she said aloud, trying to reassure the princess while simultaneously planning her next steps. "I'm just curious from a scientific perspective. Traditional remedies sometimes contain ingredients that modern medicine doesn't fully understand." Princess Isabella smiled and carefully measured out a small amount of the powder, placing it in a clean envelope that Dr. Vasquez provided. "Take whatever you need, dear. I'd be interested to hear what you discover." As Dr. Vasquez carefully sealed the envelope, she realized that her routine medical appointment had turned into something far more significant. She had no idea what she would find when she analyzed this substance, but every instinct told her that she was holding something that could change everything. They thought they knew about Princess Isabella's remarkable health and longevity. Walking back through the palace corridors, the envelope safely tucked in her medical bag, Dr. Vasquez couldn't help but notice how different everything looked now. The same walls, the same artwork, the same ancient atmosphere. But now she was carrying what might be a medical mystery that had been hiding in plain sight for 60 years. Marcus Weber was still making his rounds when Dr. Vasquez passed him in the corridor. He nodded respectfully as always, having no idea that the woman walking past him was carrying what might be one of the most significant medical discoveries of the century. The morning sun continued to stream through the palace windows, illuminating dust particles that danced in the air. To any observer, it was just another peaceful morning at Heidelberg Palace. But Dr. Vasquez knew that nothing would ever be quite the same again. She had opened a door to a mystery that might challenge everything modern medicine thought it knew about health, aging, and human longevity. As she left the palace that morning, promising to return the following week with her findings, Dr. Vasquez's mind was already racing ahead to the laboratory tests she would request. She had no idea that her curiosity would soon uncover secrets that had been hidden for generations, Secrets that would make headlines around the world and force scientists to reconsider fundamental assumptions about human health and the aging process. Dr. Elena Vasquez drove through the streets of Heidelberg with the sealed envelope containing the mysterious powder burning a hole in her consciousness. The University of Heidelberg's medical research facility was only 20 minutes from the palace, but the drive felt like hours as her mind raced through possibilities. She had called ahead to her colleague, Dr. Hans Mueller, who ran the toxicology laboratory, requesting an urgent analysis of an unknown substance. Dr. Mueller was waiting for her when she arrived at the modern glass building that housed some of Germany's most advanced medical research equipment. Hans was a meticulous scientist in his early 40s, known throughout Europe for his work in identifying unusual chemical compounds. When Elena had called him that morning asking for immediate testing of a substance that had been consumed daily for 60 years, his curiosity had been immediately piqued. "Elena, what exactly have you brought me?" Hans asked as they walked toward his laboratory. The corridors smelled of antiseptic and equipment, a sharp contrast to the ancient atmosphere of the palace. "I honestly don't know," Elena replied, carefully removing the envelope from her bag. "But Hans, the woman who's been consuming this has exceptional health for her age. Her mental acuity is remarkable, her physical condition is extraordinary, and she's been drinking a tea containing this powder every single day for 6 decades. Hans took the envelope and examined it under the laboratory's bright lights. Through the paper they could see the silvery powder that seemed to catch and reflect the fluorescent bulbs above them. "Have you considered the possibility of heavy metal poisoning? This looks like it could contain mercury or lead." Elena nodded grimly. "That was my first thought. But Hans, this woman is 78 years old and healthier than most people half her age. If this is toxic, why isn't she showing any symptoms? Why isn't she dead?" They entered the main laboratory, a sterile environment filled with sophisticated analytical equipment. Hans carefully transferred a small portion of the powder to a clean sample container while Elena watched anxiously. The substance continued to shimmer under the bright lights, giving it an almost otherworldly appearance. "We'll start with basic spectroscopy," Hans explained as he prepared the first test. "This will tell us the elemental composition. Then we can move to more specialized analysis if needed." He paused, looking at Elena seriously. "But I have to ask, are you certain this woman has been consuming this regularly? Because if this contains what I think it might, she should be experiencing severe health problems." Elena confirmed the details again while Hans began the testing process. The spectroscopy machine hummed to life, its computer screen displaying wavelengths and measurements that would reveal the atomic structure of the mysterious substance. Both doctors stood watching the screen intently as data began to populate the display. The first results appeared within minutes, and both doctors stared in stunned silence. The powder contained elements that neither of them immediately recognized. The computer was struggling to identify several peaks in the spectrum, suggesting the presence of compounds that weren't in its extensive database. "This is impossible," Hans muttered, adjusting the machine's settings and running the test again. "These readings don't match any known substances in our system." Elena felt her pulse quickening. "What exactly are you seeing?" Hans pointed to several spikes on the computer display. "These peaks here suggest the presence of metallic compounds, but they're not matching our database of known elements. And look at this," he indicated another section of the readout. "These wavelengths are completely unfamiliar." They ran additional tests over the next several hours. Each analysis revealed more questions than answers. The powder appeared to contain a complex mixture of substances, some identifiable as rare earth minerals, others completely unknown to modern science. More disturbing was what they weren't finding. There were no signs of common toxic metals like lead or mercury, which might explain the absence of poisoning symptoms. By late afternoon, Hans was openly baffled. "Elena, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like this. Some of these compounds appear to be elements that don't exist in nature, at least not in any form we currently understand." Elena paced around the laboratory, her medical training warring with what the evidence was suggesting. "Could this be some kind of synthetic compound? Something created artificially? That's what's so strange," Hans replied, studying the latest printouts. "The binding structures suggest this is natural, possibly very ancient, but the elemental composition includes things that, according to our current understanding of chemistry, shouldn't be stable or shouldn't exist at all." They decided to contact Dr. Sarah Chen, a colleague at the Max Planck Institute for Chemistry who specialized in unusual mineral compositions. Dr. Chen agreed to analyze their data remotely,
and within hours she was calling back with results that only deepened the mystery. "I've consulted with several colleagues," Dr. Chen said over the speakerphone, "and we're all reaching the same conclusion. This substance contains isotopes that we've only theorized about in academic papers. Some of these elements appear to be ultra-rare isotopes that would normally decay within minutes, but somehow they're remaining stable." Elena sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the implications. "Sarah, is it possible that this substance could have beneficial effects on human health? Could it actually be helping rather than harming?" There was a long pause before Dr. Chen answered. "Based on theoretical models, some of these isotopes could potentially interact with cellular processes in ways we don't fully understand. But, Elena, we're talking about substances that shouldn't exist in nature. Where did you get this sample?" Elena explained about Princess Isabella and her 60-year routine. Dr. Chen listened in growing amazement before suggesting they needed to involve additional specialists. The conversation continued for another hour, with each expert consultation revealing new layers to the mystery. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Marcus Weber was completing his evening rounds. Princess Isabella had retired to her private quarters after a day of meetings with historians and curators. She seemed as energetic and sharp as always, showing no signs of fatigue despite her busy schedule. Marcus often marveled at her stamina, especially compared to other elderly people he knew. As Marcus locked the main entrance for the night, he noticed Dr. Vasquez's car pulling into the palace parking area. She got out looking troubled and exhausted, carrying what appeared to be a thick folder of documents. Marcus approached her, concerned by her obvious distress. "Doctor, is everything all right? You look like you've had a difficult day." Elena paused, realizing she couldn't discuss her findings with palace staff, but needing to share her burden with someone. "Marcus, how long have you worked here?"
15 years.
He replied immediately.
Why do you ask?
"In all that time, have you ever noticed anything unusual about Princess Isabella's health? Anything that struck you as remarkable?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "Well, she's always been in excellent shape for her age. Never gets sick, never seems tired, always sharp as a tack. My own mother is younger than the princess and she doesn't have half her energy." "Why? Is something wrong?" Elena shook her head quickly. "No, nothing's wrong. I'm just conducting some research into healthy aging. Princess Isabella is a remarkable case study." Marcus nodded, reassured but still curious. "If it helps your research, I can tell you that in 15 years, I've never seen her have so much as a cold."
And the way she moves, it's like she's decades younger than her actual age.
After Marcus continued with his duties, Elena sat in her car for several minutes, staring at the palace.
The building looked the same as always, ancient and stately in the evening light, but now she knew it contained a secret that could revolutionize medicine and science. The folder beside her contained test results that challenged fundamental assumptions about chemistry, biology, and human health. Her phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. It was Hans, calling with additional results from tests that had continued running after she left. "Elena, you need to hear this. I ran cellular toxicity tests on laboratory cultures, exposing them to minute quantities of the substance. The results are unprecedented." Elena's heart raced. What kind of results? Instead of showing toxicity, the cells exposed to this substance showed enhanced regeneration, improved DNA repair mechanisms, and resistance to oxidative stress. "Elena, this isn't just non-toxic. It appears to be actively beneficial at the cellular level." Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of discovery settling on her shoulders. "Hans, we need to be very careful about how we proceed, if word of this gets out prematurely." "I understand," Hans interrupted. "But, Elena, we're looking at something that could change medicine forever. This substance appears to slow or even reverse cellular aging processes. If Princess Isabella has been consuming this for 60 years, she might be the first documented case of successful life extension in human history." After ending the call, Elena sat in the darkness of the palace parking lot, contemplating what she had uncovered. Tomorrow she would need to speak with Princess Isabella again. But this time the conversation would be very different. She would need to explain that the family recipe the princess had been following might be one of the most significant medical discoveries in human history. The palace stood silently around her, keeping its secrets as it had for centuries. But now Elena knew that at least one of those secrets was about to change the world. The question was whether she was prepared for the responsibility that knowledge brought. Inside the palace, Princess Isabella was preparing for bed, following the same routine she had maintained for decades. She had no idea that her morning tea had just become the subject of intense scientific investigation.
or that her simple family tradition was about to thrust her into the center of a medical revolution. As Elena finally started her car and drove home, she realized that tomorrow would bring decisions that could affect not just Princess Isabella's life, but the future of human medicine. The quiet routine of palace life was about to be shattered by the revelation that a cup of tea had been hiding one of science's greatest mysteries. The evening air was cool as Marcus completed his final security check, ensuring all doors were locked and all systems were functioning properly. He had no way of knowing that the conversation with Dr. Vasquez had been far more significant than it seemed, or that the palace he had protected for 15 years was about to become the center of international attention. In her laboratory notes that night, Elena wrote a single sentence that would soon become famous in medical circles around the world. Patient has been unknowingly participating in the most successful life extension experiment in recorded human history, but she had no idea that the story was just beginning and that the mysterious powder would soon reveal secrets that went far beyond medicine, touching on history, archaeology, and questions about the very nature of human potential. Elena arrived at the palace the following morning with a heavy heart and a briefcase full of test results that would change everything. She had spent most of the night reading research papers and consulting with colleagues around the world, trying to understand the implications of what she had discovered. The substance Princess Isabella had been consuming contained elements that shouldn't exist according to current scientific understanding, yet the evidence was undeniable. Marcus noticed her troubled expression as she walked through the main entrance. "Good morning, doctor. You look like you didn't sleep well." Elena managed a weak smile. "Good morning, Marcus. Is Princess Isabella available? I need to speak with her urgently about her health." Marcus could hear the concern in her voice and immediately became alert. "Is everything all right?"
Should I be worried about something?
No immediate danger, Elena assured him quickly, though privately she wasn't entirely certain of that statement. I just need to discuss some test results with her. Princess Isabella was in her study, a room lined floor to ceiling with books and historical documents.
She was reviewing correspondence when Elena knocked on the door. The elderly woman looked up with her characteristic warm smile, but her expression changed when she saw the serious look on her doctor's face. "My dear, you look terribly concerned. Please, sit down and tell me what's troubling you." Elena took a deep breath, knowing that what she was about to say would forever alter Princess Isabella's peaceful existence. "Your Highness, yesterday I had the tea ingredients analyzed at the university laboratory. The results are extraordinary and concerning." Princess Isabella set down her papers, giving Elena her full attention. "Concerning how? Have I been poisoning myself all these years?" "Quite the opposite," Elena said carefully. "The substance you've been consuming contains compounds that appear to have remarkable beneficial effects on human health. But, Your Highness, these compounds shouldn't exist according to our current understanding of science." Princess Isabella looked puzzled rather than alarmed. "I'm not sure I understand what you mean by shouldn't exist." Elena opened her briefcase and removed several scientific reports. "The powder in your grandmother's container contains isotopes of elements that modern science has only theorized about. Some of these elements are so rare that they should decay within minutes of being formed, yet somehow they remain stable in this substance." "And this is why you look so worried?" Princess Isabella asked gently. Elena shook her head. "Your Highness, when we tested these compounds on laboratory cell cultures, they showed remarkable properties: enhanced DNA repair, improved cellular regeneration, resistance to aging processes. Your exceptional health isn't just good genetics. It's the result of consuming what might be the most effective anti-aging substance ever discovered." Princess Isabella was quiet for a long moment, absorbing this information. "Are you saying that my grandmother's tea recipe is some sort of fountain of youth? I'm saying that your family has unknowingly preserved a substance that could revolutionize medicine and extend human lifespan dramatically. The question is, where did it come from? Your grandmother told you it contained special stones, but these aren't ordinary minerals." Princess Isabella stood and walked to the window looking out at the palace gardens. "My grandmother was always secretive about her family history. She came from a very old Austrian noble family, but she never spoke much about her ancestors. She did mention once that the recipe had been passed down for many generations, possibly centuries." Elena felt excitement building despite her concerns. "Do you have any family records that might explain where this substance originated?" "There might be something in the family archives," Princess Isabella said thoughtfully. "My grandmother left behind several trunks of documents when she died. I've never gone through them thoroughly. Most are written in Old German, and some appear to be in Latin or other languages I don't recognize. Would you be willing to examine them with me? If we can trace the origin of this substance, it might help us understand what we're dealing with." Princess Isabella agreed, and they spent the next hour locating the storage area where her grandmother's possessions had been kept. The room was in the palace's lower level, accessed by a narrow stone staircase that spoke to the building's great age.
3 large wooden trunks sat against one wall, covered with dust and clearly untouched for decades. Opening the first trunk revealed layers of carefully wrapped documents, some clearly very old.
Princess Isabella handled them gently, explaining that her grandmother had been meticulous about preserving family records. Many of the papers were written in archaic German script, while others appeared to be in Latin.
Elena's excitement grew as they uncovered what appeared to be laboratory notes from centuries past. Your Highness, some of these documents look like scientific observations.
Look at these drawings. They appear to be chemical formulas or alchemical symbols. They found a leather-bound journal that seemed particularly significant. The pages were filled with detailed notes written in multiple languages, accompanied by diagrams and symbols that looked like early chemistry notations. Princess Isabella struggled to translate some of the German text while Elena attempted to decipher the Latin portions. Here's something interesting, Princess Isabella said, pointing to a page near the beginning of the journal. This mentions the stones of eternal life and describes a process for creating a powder from them. The date appears to be 1687. Elena leaned closer, her heart racing.
That would make this recipe over 300 years old. What else does it say? As they continued reading, a remarkable story began to emerge.
The journal belonged to Princess Isabella's ancestor, Count Friedrich von Habsburg, who appeared to have been both a nobleman and an amateur scientist. The entries described his discovery of unusual stones in a cave system beneath his castle, stones that glowed with their own light, and seemed to possess remarkable properties.
Listen to this, Princess Isabella said, translating slowly from the old German text. The stones were found in a chamber deep beneath the castle foundations.
When ground to powder and consumed in small quantities, they grant extended life and perfect health. But the Count warns that too much can be dangerous, even deadly.
Helena felt chills running down her spine. Keep reading. Does he explain where the stones came from or how they formed? The journal revealed that Count Friedrich had conducted careful experiments with the stones over several years.
He had tested them on laboratory animals first, observing remarkable improvements in their health and longevity. When he finally began consuming small amounts himself, he noted dramatic improvements in his energy, mental clarity, and physical condition. But the most startling revelation came in entries dated several months later. Count Friedrich wrote about strange dreams and visions that began occurring after he started consuming the stone powder. He described seeing images of ancient civilizations and technologies far beyond anything that existed in his time. Your Highness, this is incredible. Your ancestor was documenting effects that go far beyond simple health improvements. He was experiencing what sounds like enhanced cognitive abilities, possibly even some kind of expanded consciousness.
Princess Isabella continued translating, her voice growing more amazed with each passage. He writes about receiving knowledge from the stones, understanding complex scientific principles that wouldn't be discovered for centuries.
But then the entries become concerning. The later journal entries revealed that Count Friedrich had begun to suspect the stones were not of earthly origin. He wrote about conducting tests that suggested the stones contained elements that couldn't be found anywhere else on Earth. His scientific observations, primitive by modern standards but remarkably advanced for his time, led him to conclude that the stones might be remnants of meteoric material.
Look at this drawing, Elena said, pointing to a detailed diagram in the journal. He's drawn what appears to be crystalline structures at a molecular level.
How could someone in 1687 understand atomic structure? The implications were staggering. Not only had Princess Isabella's family preserved a substance with remarkable medical properties, but the historical records suggested that this substance had been enhancing human cognitive abilities for centuries. Count Friedrich's journal described discoveries and insights that shouldn't have been possible with 17th century knowledge. As they continued through the documents, they found additional evidence of the substance's extraordinary properties.
Letters from Count Friedrich's correspondents described him as having become remarkably wise and knowledgeable about subjects he had never formally studied.
Some writers expressed concern about his seemingly supernatural insights into natural philosophy and medicine. The final entries in the journal were the most disturbing. Count Friedrich wrote about feeling disconnected from ordinary human concerns and experiencing time in unusual ways. He described moments when he felt he could see into the future, and others when he seemed to remember events from the distant past that he couldn't have witnessed.
This explains so much, Elena murmured, thinking about Princess Isabella's remarkable mental acuity and seemingly intuitive understanding of complex subjects. But the story took an even more dramatic turn when they discovered a hidden compartment in the bottom of the third trunk.
Inside was a small stone about the size of a marble, that glowed with a faint inner light. Even in the dim basement storage room, the object was clearly visible, emanating its own soft luminescence. "My God," Elena whispered, staring at the glowing stone. "This must be one of the original stones your ancestor found." Princess Isabella reached out to touch it, then hesitated.
Do you think it's safe to handle?
Elena considered the question seriously. Given what they had learned about the powder's beneficial effects, and considering that Princess Isabella had been consuming derivatives of these stones for 60 years, it seemed unlikely that brief contact would be harmful.
Still, she suggested they handle it carefully. The stone felt warm to the touch and seemed to pulse gently with its inner light. Elena's scientific mind raced with questions about its composition and origin. If this stone contained the same elements as the powder Princess Isabella had been consuming, it represented a sample of matter unlike anything else known to science. "We need to have this analyzed," Elena said, carefully wrapping the stone in soft cloth. "But we also need to be extremely careful about who we involve in this investigation." Princess Isabella nodded, understanding the implications. "If word of this gets out prematurely, we'll be overwhelmed with scientists, reporters, and possibly governments wanting to study both the stones and me." They spent the rest of the afternoon going through additional documents, finding more evidence of the stone's remarkable properties. Count Friedrich had apparently shared his discovery with a select few trusted colleagues, and their correspondence revealed that several noble families across Europe had possessed similar stones, though most had been lost or depleted over the centuries. One letter, dated 1692, mentioned that a colleague in France had discovered similar stones in ancient Roman ruins, suggesting that knowledge of these materials might date back even further than the Habsburg family records indicated. Another correspondent wrote from England, describing stones found in what he believed to be prehistoric burial sites. Elena realized they were looking at evidence of a substance that had been known and used by humans for possibly thousands of years, but had been largely forgotten or dismissed as legend. The stones appeared in various historical accounts as philosopher's stones, stones of wisdom, or life crystals, but had been relegated to mythology and folklore by modern historians. As the day wore on, Elena became increasingly convinced that they were dealing with something of extraterrestrial origin. The elemental composition, the energy emission, and the extraordinary effects on human physiology all suggested that these stones were not naturally occurring Earth materials. "Your Highness," Elena said as they prepared to lock up the storage room, "I believe we need to involve additional experts, but very carefully. This discovery could change our understanding of human potential, but it could also make you a target for people who might want to exploit these stones for less noble purposes." Princess Isabella agreed, though she expressed concern about maintaining her privacy and the palace's peaceful atmosphere. They decided to contact a small, trusted group of scientists who could help them understand the stones, while maintaining discretion about the discovery. That evening, Elena called Drs. Muller and Dr. Chen, explaining what they had discovered in the family archives. "This is the book. It's about history." Both scientists were stunned by the historical documentation and eager to analyze the glowing stone. But they agreed to maintain complete secrecy until they'd better understood what they were dealing with. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his evening rounds, unaware that the basement storage room now contained evidence of what might be the most significant scientific discovery in human history. As he checked the palace's security systems, he noticed that Dr. Vasquez and Princess Isabella seemed to be spending more time together than usual, but assumed it was related to the princess's medical care. The following day brought a new development that would accelerate events beyond what Elena had anticipated. Dr. Chen called early in the morning with news that made Elena's blood run cold. "Elena, I've been researching historical accounts of similar discoveries, and I found something you need to know immediately." There are government files from World War II indicating that both Allied and Axis forces were searching for objects matching the description of your stones. Apparently, there were rumors about ancient substances that could enhance human performance. Elena felt her stomach drop. "Are you saying that people already know about these stones?" "I'm saying that there may be individuals or organizations who have been searching for materials like this for decades. If word gets out about Princess Isabella's stones, you might find yourselves dealing with parties who have resources and motivations you can't imagine." After ending the call, Elena immediately drove to the palace. She found Princess Isabella in her garden, tending to her roses with the same graceful energy she displayed in everything she did. The morning sun illuminated her face, and Elena was struck again by how remarkably youthful the elderly woman appeared. "Your Highness, we have a problem," Elena said without preamble. "It appears that knowledge of substances like your stones may not be as lost as we thought. There are people who might already be looking for materials like this. Princess Isabella set down her garden shears and gave Elena her full attention.
What kind of people? Elena explained Dr. Chen's findings about government interest during World War II and the possibility that research into life-extending substances had continued in secret.
We need to decide how to proceed very carefully. These stones could benefit humanity enormously, but they could also be extremely dangerous in the wrong hands.
As they spoke, Marcus approached from across the garden, his expression concerned.
Excuse me for interrupting, but, Your Highness, there are some unusual visitors at the main gate.
They claim to be historians researching Habsburg family artifacts, but something about them doesn't seem right. Elena and Princess Isabella exchanged worried glances.
The timing seemed too coincidental to be chance.
Elena's investigation had been conducted quietly, but in the interconnected world of academic research, information could travel quickly through unexpected channels.
What exactly seems wrong about them? Elena asked.
Marcus frowned, clearly troubled by something he couldn't quite identify. They have proper credentials, but they're asking very specific questions about family heirlooms and historical recipes, and they seem to know more about the palace's history than most historians who visit us.
Elena felt her pulse quickening. Did they mention anything specific about the princess's health or daily routines?
Actually, yes, Marcus replied, looking surprised by the question.
One of them asked whether the princess followed any traditional health practices that had been passed down through her family.
When I said I didn't know details about her personal routines, he seemed disappointed. The implications were clear. Somehow word of Elena's investigation had reached people who understood its significance. Whether through academic networks, government monitoring, or other channels, their secret was no longer entirely safe. Princess Isabella remained calm, but Elena could see the concern in her eyes.
"What do you recommend we do?"
the princess asked. Elena made a quick decision that would determine the course of everything that followed.
"We need to accelerate our research and make sure that knowledge of these stones becomes public in a way that protects both you and the stones themselves. If we're going to lose control of this secret anyway, we need to ensure that the discovery benefits humanity rather than serving the interests of whoever these visitors represent."
Marcus looked confused by the conversation, but his security instincts were clearly activated. Should I refuse entry to these historians? Tell them that the princess is unavailable today, but don't give them any reason to become suspicious, Elena instructed. And Marcus, I need you to understand that the next few days may bring unusual situations to the palace. Can we count on your discretion and protection? Marcus straightened, his expression becoming determined. Of course. Whatever's happening, I'll make sure the princess remains safe.
As the unusual visitors were turned away from the palace gates, Elena realized that the quiet investigation she had hoped to conduct was about to become something much larger and more dangerous. The stones that had preserved Princess Isabella's health for 60 years were about to thrust all of them into the center of a storm that would change their lives forever.
The peaceful morning in the palace garden had marked the end of an era. From this point forward, nothing would ever be the same for Princess Isabella, Elena, or the ancient secret that had remained hidden for centuries. The race to understand and protect one of history's most remarkable discoveries was about to begin. The rejected visitors didn't disappear, as Elena had hoped. Marcus noticed them throughout the day, stationed at various points around the palace perimeter, pretending to be tourists but clearly conducting surveillance. Their presence created an atmosphere of tension that even the palace staff began to notice. Elena spent the afternoon making urgent phone calls to establish a network of protection around their discovery. She contacted Dr. Corey James Morrison, a friend at the World Health Organization, explaining that she had discovered a substance with remarkable medical properties, but was concerned about security issues.
Morrison agreed to provide support and resources while maintaining confidentiality. She also reached out to Professor Angela Schmidt at the German Federal Institute for Risk Assessment, who specialized in protecting medical discoveries of national significance.
Professor Schmidt's response was immediate and alarming. Dr. Vasquez, based on your description, you've discovered something that various groups have been searching for decades. These substances have been mentioned in classified documents going back to the 1940s. You need government protection immediately. Elena's worst fears were being confirmed. The stones weren't just a medical discovery. They represented something that powerful organizations had been actively seeking. What kind of protection are we talking about? The kind that involves relocating Princess Isabella to a secure facility until we can properly study these stones and determine how to proceed. Professor Schmidt replied, these materials could be worth billions of dollars, and they could give any nation or organization that controls them a tremendous advantage. Elena looked out the palace window at Princess Isabella, who was still in her garden,
unaware that her peaceful life was about to be completely disrupted. The idea of moving the elderly woman from her beloved home seemed cruel, but Elena was beginning to understand that they might have no choice. Marcus approached the study where Elena was making calls, his expression grim.
Doctor, we have a problem. I've identified at least 6 different people conducting surveillance on the palace.
They're being careful, but I know what to look for. And there's something else. They have sophisticated equipment.
This isn't just academic interest. Elena felt her heart sink.
What kind of equipment? Electromagnetic scanners, possibly radiation detectors. Whatever they're looking for, they believe it might be detectable through scientific instruments. The implications were chilling. If these people had equipment capable of detecting the stone's unique energy signature, the palace's security was already compromised. Elena realized they were running out of time to control the situation. She found Princess Isabella still in the garden, but now the elderly woman's expression showed that she too had noticed the unusual activity around the palace. "My dear," Princess Isabella said calmly, "I believe our secret is no longer secret." Elena nodded grimly. "Your Highness, I've been speaking with government officials and security experts.
They're recommending that we move you to a protected location until we can sort this out." Princess Isabella was quiet for a long moment, looking at the palace that had been her home for 40 years. This place.
And the stones? What happens to them? They'll be studied by teams of scientists who can properly understand their properties and determine how to use them safely for humanity's benefit.
But the priority right now is keeping you safe. Princess Isabella surprised Elena by smiling gently. "My dear doctor, I am 78 years old. I have lived a full and wonderful life in this beautiful place. I'm not afraid of whatever dangers these stones might bring."
Elena was moved by the princess's courage, but remained concerned. "Your Highness, these people might try to use you as a test subject, or worse. We don't know what their intentions are." Their conversation was interrupted by Marcus, who approached quickly with obvious urgency. "Your Highness, Dr.
Vasquez, we have an immediate situation. Armed men are approaching the main gate.
They're not making any pretense of being tourists or historians." Elena's blood ran cold. The careful surveillance had apparently been preparation for a more direct approach. "How many men?" "At least 8 that I can see, possibly more."
"They have vehicles blocking both ends of the road to the palace." Elena immediately called Professor Schmidt, who had given her a direct emergency number. "Professor, the situation has escalated. Armed men are approaching the palace." "Stay where you are," Professor Schmidt replied curtly.
"German federal agents are already en route to your location. Do not attempt to leave the palace, and keep the princess away from windows." Princess Isabella remained remarkably calm despite the developing crisis. "Marcus, how long can the palace security hold them off?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "The main building is quite secure. Thick stone walls, reinforced doors. But we're not equipped for a military assault. Maybe an hour at most if they're determined to get in."
Elena made a decision that would prove crucial to everything that followed. "Your Highness, we need to secure the stones. If these people get their hands on them, we may never see them again." They moved quickly to the basement storage area where the family archives were kept. Elena carefully packed the original glowing stone and several samples of the powder into a specially lined case she had prepared. Princess Isabella gathered the most important family documents, including Count Friedrich's journal and the historical correspondence. As they worked, the sound of vehicles could be heard approaching the palace. Marcus stationed himself at a window where he could observe the main courtyard, while maintaining radio contact with the small palace security team.
"They're setting up some kind of equipment," Marcus reported. "Looks like electronic detection gear. And I can see at least 12 armed men now." Elena realized with growing alarm that these people were far better organized and equipped than she had initially feared. This wasn't a simple attempt to steal valuable artifacts. It was a military-style operation, designed to capture both the stones and Princess Isabella herself. Professor Schmidt called back with an update that provided both hope and additional concern.
"Federal agents are 15 minutes out, but Dr. Vasquez, we've identified some of the people surrounding your palace. They appear to be associated with a private research organization that has been involved in classified government projects. This situation is more complex than we initially understood."
Elena's mind raced. A private organization with government connections meant they were dealing with people who had resources, legal protections, and possibly official sanction for their actions. The federal agents might not be enough to resolve this situation. Princess Isabella, who had been listening to Elena's end of the phone conversation, made an unexpected suggestion. "Dr.
Vasquez,
there's something I haven't told you about the family archives. There are underground passages beneath the palace, built centuries ago for exactly this kind of situation."
Elena stared at her in amazement. Underground passages? The palace has been home to nobility for hundreds of years.
My ancestors dealt with wars, invasions, and political upheavals. They built escape routes and hidden chambers throughout the building.
Marcus immediately understood the implications. Your Highness, can these passages get us away from the palace without being detected? Princess Isabella nodded.
They exit nearly a mile from here, in the old monastery ruins. But I haven't used them in decades, and I'm not certain they're still passable.
Elena weighed their options quickly. The approaching federal agents would hopefully resolve the immediate threat, but the involvement of a private organization with government connections suggested that this situation might not end with a simple rescue.
If they could secure the stones and get Princess Isabella to safety through the underground passages, they would have more control over how this discovery was revealed to the world. How do we access these passages? Elena asked. Princess Isabella led them deeper into the basement to a stone wall that looked identical to all the others. She pressed a specific sequence of stones, and to Elena's amazement, a section of the wall swung inward, revealing a narrow passage that disappeared into darkness. Marcus tested his radio communication. I'm losing contact with the security team, but I can hear vehicles and voices in the courtyard. They're definitely inside the palace grounds. Elena made the decision that would determine everything that followed. We're going through the passages. Princess Isabella, can you manage the walk? The elderly woman smiled with determination. My dear, I've been consuming stones that grant extended life for 60 years.
I believe I can manage a walk through tunnels my ancestors built. They gathered their essential materials, the stones, the historical documents, and Alina's research files, and entered the hidden passage. Marcus sealed the entrance behind them, hoping to buy additional time before their escape route was discovered. The passage was narrow and clearly ancient, carved directly from the rock beneath the palace. Emergency lighting that had been installed decades earlier still functioned, providing enough illumination to navigate safely. Princess Isabella moved through the tunnels with surprising agility, proving that her exceptional health extended to physical endurance as well as mental acuity. As they walked, Elena couldn't help but think about the historical irony of their situation. They were using passages built centuries ago by Princess Isabella's ancestors to protect the same stones that Count Friedrich von Habsburg had discovered in these very caverns. The tunnel system was more extensive than Elena had imagined. Side passages branched off in multiple directions, and some chambers contained evidence of long-ago use. Old storage areas, primitive living spaces, and what appeared to be laboratory areas, where Count Friedrich might have conducted his original research on the stones. After 20 minutes of careful walking, they reached a larger chamber that Princess Isabella explained was roughly halfway to the exit. Here, they paused to rest and assess their situation. Marcus attempted to use his radio but got only static, suggesting they were now beyond range of the palace communication systems. Dr. Vasquez, Princess Isabella said as they rested, I want you to understand something important. These stones have been in my family for centuries, but I don't believe we own them in any meaningful sense. They're too important for that. Elena looked at the elderly woman with growing respect. Even facing danger and uncertainty, Princess Isabella was thinking about the broader implications of their discovery. What are you suggesting? Elena asked. I'm suggesting that when we emerge from these tunnels, we make sure that knowledge of these stones serves humanity, not just whoever can capture them first. My family has been their guardians, but perhaps it's time for them to belong to the world. As they prepared to continue their journey through the ancient passages, Elena realized that Princess Isabella's wisdom might be just as remarkable as her physical health. The stones had preserved more than just her body. They had enhanced her understanding and judgment in ways that could prove crucial to humanity's future. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the stone corridors as they moved toward an uncertain future, carrying with them one of the most important discoveries in human history. Behind them, the palace that had guarded this secret for centuries was being searched by people whose intentions remained unknown. Ahead of them lay the challenge of protecting a discovery that could change the world. The ancient tunnel system led them through passages that told the story of centuries of secret use. Elena noticed carved symbols on the walls that matched some of the alchemical drawings in Count Friedrich's journal, suggesting that these underground chambers had been used for scientific research long before modern laboratories existed. After 45 minutes of careful navigation, they reached what Princess Isabella identified as the exit chamber. A wooden ladder led upward to a concealed entrance in the ruins of a medieval monastery about a mile from the palace. Marcus climbed first to check that their exit was secure. All clear, he called down softly. There's a car parked nearby, might be federal agents. They emerged into the late afternoon sunlight among the moss-covered stones of the ancient monastery. Elena was amazed by how far they had traveled underground and how effectively the passage system had concealed their escape.
A black sedan was indeed parked near the monastery ruins, and two individuals in professional attire approached them carefully. Elena recognized Professor Schmidt, who had arrived with a German federal agent.
Dr. Vasquez, Princess Isabella. Professor Schmidt said with evident relief. Thank God you're safe. The situation at the palace has become quite serious. Agent Mueller, a tall man with a military bearing, provided them with a briefing that confirmed Elena's worst fears. The organization that surrounded your palace is called the Prometheus Institute. They're a private research consortium that contracts with various governments for classified projects. They have legal authority to investigate potential security threats involving advanced technologies. Elena felt her stomach drop. Are you saying they can legally take the stones? That depends on what the stones actually are and where they came from, Agent Mueller replied.
Vasquez, your preliminary research indicates these materials have properties that could affect national security interests. Multiple governments are now involved.
Princess Isabella stepped forward with the dignity that had characterized her entire life. Agent Mueller, these stones have been in my family for over 3 centuries. They've never been used for anything except maintaining my health. How can they suddenly become a security threat? Agent Mueller's expression softened slightly. Your Highness, the properties Dr. Vasquez discovered life extension, cognitive enhancement, cellular regeneration. These could revolutionize everything from military capabilities to economic systems. In the wrong hands, they could create unprecedented advantages or disadvantages between nations. Professor Schmidt added her perspective. We've been in contact with the World Health Organization, the European Science Foundation, and several government agencies. There's agreement that this discovery needs to be handled through international cooperation, not by any single organization or nation. Elena realized they were witnessing the birth of a new kind of international crisis. What happens now? Now we protect Princess Isabella and the stones while assembling an international team of scientists to properly study them, Agent Mueller explained. But we need to move quickly. The Prometheus Institute has powerful backing, and they're arguing that delay could allow these materials to fall into hostile hands. SAs who had been quietly observing the conversation spoke up. What happened at the palace? Is my security team all right? Agent Mueller nodded. Your people are safe. The Prometheus Institute conducted a thorough search but found nothing. Their electromagnetic equipment detected unusual energy signatures in the basement area, but they couldn't locate the source. Elena felt a moment of satisfaction knowing that Count Friedrich's hidden passages had protected the stones once again, centuries after their original construction. They were driven to a secure research facility at the University of Heidelberg, where Elena was amazed to discover that an international team of scientists had already assembled. Dr. Baker Morrison from the WHO was there, along with researchers from Britain, France, the United States, and Japan. The speed of the response indicated that government networks had been monitoring discoveries like this. Dr. Sarah Chen greeted Elena with obvious excitement. Elena, the preliminary data you shared has caused tremendous excitement in the scientific community. But we need to understand these stones completely before we can determine how to proceed. Princess Isabella was provided with comfortable accommodations at the research facility, along with medical monitoring to ensure that temporary separation from her daily tea wouldn't affect her health. Elena was relieved to observe that the princess showed no signs of withdrawal or deterioration. The glowing stone Elena had secured from the palace archives became the subject of intense but careful study. Advanced spectroscopy equipment confirmed the presence of isotopes that shouldn't exist naturally, while crystallographic analysis revealed atomic structures that challenged current understanding of molecular chemistry. Dr. Morrison presented findings that expanded the mystery even further. We've discovered that this stone is gradually changing its internal structure. It's not just stable, it's actively evolving at the atomic level. This suggests it might be some kind of programmable matter. Elena felt overwhelmed by the implications. Programmable matter? Are you suggesting these stones are some kind of technology rather than natural materials? I'm suggesting, Dr. Morrison replied carefully, that we might be looking at materials created by a civilization with scientific capabilities far beyond our current level. The international team worked around the clock to understand the stone's properties while maintaining absolute secrecy about their research. But Elena soon learned that their secret hadn't been as well protected as they hoped. Professor Schmidt pulled Elena aside with disturbing news. The Prometheus Institute has filed legal challenges claiming that the stones represent extraterrestrial materials that fall under international space law. They're arguing that no individual or family can claim ownership of materials from outer space. Elena's heart sank. Can they make that argument stick? If they can prove the stones are of extraterrestrial origin, yes. And Dr. Vasquez, our analysis is suggesting that they might be right.
The isotopic composition doesn't match anything found naturally on Earth.
As the legal and scientific complexities multiplied, Alina began to understand that Princess Isabella's simple family tradition had unleashed forces that would affect global politics, international law, and scientific understanding for decades to come. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source.
Dr. Chen discovered that the stone's energy emission followed patterns that matched theoretical models for exotic matter propulsion systems. These aren't just life-extending substances, she announced to the assembled team. They appear to be components of advanced technology that we're only beginning to understand. Further analysis revealed that the stones contained information encoded at the quantum level, essentially making them data storage devices containing vast amounts of scientific knowledge. When Princess Isabella consumed the powder, she wasn't just ingesting life-extending compounds. She was accessing information that enhanced her cognitive abilities and understanding. This explains Count Friedrich's remarkable insights, Elena realized. He wasn't just living longer. He was literally downloading advanced scientific knowledge. The discovery transformed the entire investigation. They weren't just studying a medical miracle. They were examining technology that could accelerate human development by centuries. Princess Isabella took the revelations with remarkable equanimity. I always knew my grandmother's tea was special, but I never imagined it was this special. The international team faced an unprecedented decision about how to handle their discovery. The stones clearly represented technology from an advanced civilization, possibly not human in origin. Their potential to revolutionize medicine, extend human lifespan, and accelerate scientific progress was enormous. But their power also made them extremely dangerous. Agent Mueller convened a meeting with representatives from multiple governments to discuss how to proceed. We're looking at technology that could give any nation or organization that controls it decisive advantages, but we're also looking at potential benefits for all humanity. Elena found herself at the center of discussions that would determine the future of human civilization. The quiet medical consultation she had conducted just weeks earlier had evolved into one of the most significant moments in human history. Princess Isabella made the decision that ultimately resolved the crisis. I formally donate these stones to the United Nations, with the requirement that any knowledge gained from studying them be shared equally among all nations. They've been in my family for centuries, but they belong to humanity. Her gesture broke the legal deadlock and provided a framework for international cooperation. The Prometheus Institute's claims were superseded by Princess Isabella's donation, and the stones became the first artifacts officially classified as global heritage technology. The story broke worldwide 3 months later, when the initial research results were published simultaneously in major scientific journals around the world. Princess Isabella became an international celebrity not just as the woman who had unknowingly participated in the most successful life extension experiment in history, but as the person whose wisdom and generosity had ensured that humanity's greatest discovery would benefit everyone. Marcus returned to his duties at the palace, but now he protected a site that had become one of the most important historical locations in the world. The palace became a research center where scientists from every nation worked together to understand the implications of the stones. Elena continued her research, leading an international team studying the medical applications of the stone technology. The knowledge encoded in the stones was revealing treatments for diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia. Princess Isabella continued her daily tea, but now she knew that each sip connected her to knowledge from civilizations that had existed among the stars. Her remarkable health wasn't just the result of advanced chemistry. It was evidence of technologies that suggested humanity wasn't alone in the universe. The discovery changed everything about how humans understood their place in the cosmos. The stones proved that advanced civilizations had visited Earth in the past, leaving behind technology disguised as simple minerals. But perhaps more importantly, Princess Isabella's decision to share this discovery with all humanity proved that even in the face of world-changing discoveries, human wisdom and generosity could prevail. Years later, when historians wrote about the day that changed human civilization, they focused not just on the remarkable stones that had extended one woman's life for 60 years, but on the guard who noticed something unusual, the doctor who asked the right questions, and the princess who chose to give the greatest gift in human history to the world. The routine that Marcus had followed for 15 years had led to the discovery that nothing about human life would ever be routine again, and it all began with a simple observation about an unusual cup of tea.